Thank you. So I did the project last summer in June 2020, and there was a lot going on in the world, and it was a really important time to be listening and staying home, but also showing up. And as a poet, feeling a lot of things. And so I was doing visual poems every day for the month, and at the end of it, had 30 and ended up with a few more, and they've become a book that's coming out in a few months. Bit of good news from Tupelo. I love that that's how it started, and it's definitely the majority of the book. So yeah, I'll share one of those with you now. It's untitled. Let the clocks run down and subside in the ether. It is at home in steep walls, not daring to be released to me. Let us pause for a moment and strike balance, while the fog forges each minute into fever, graves beckon to burn and shape time. But I am not the seeker, for longitude is nothing but the difference between time and the observer. The purpose of clocks is out of my life. Each year, again, I drop into the lifespan well along. I might have arrived in architecture. It came with a letter. I will land you and doubt the spring of the year. I would live over again, merged with the tongue in need of tuning, choked with the monsters of parentheses. But even sound is an unbroken expanse among the greater taking of time and fever and nothing more. Thanks. Thank you. And now we'll hear from Michelle Herman. Oh, you're muted.
Oh, Michelle, yes.
Yes, Michelle, the teacher who's constantly telling her students. Sorry about that. So I did the Tupelo 30-30 in June 2015, the same month that I got called for grand jury duty. So
oh my God.
A very exciting month. It was maybe the best month I've ever had, I would say. You could use me as the poster child for the 30-30 before the marathon, which I signed up for on just a complete whim. I had completed maybe 6 poems in my life, and that includes 2 that I wrote when I was in elementary school. Less than 3 years after the marathon, I published my first chapbook of poems made up largely of poems I'd written during the marathon. And I'm just about to publish my second chapbook. And I've also had poems just this year in the Hudson Review and Plowshares, and I just had 2 accepted by the Sun. So thank you to Jeffrey, to Kirsten, to Hannah, to Marie Gauthier, who used to be the contact person, and to Tupelo in general. We are capable of so much more than we ever dreamed we can do. Okay, and this poem, this goes out to my husband, Jonathan, who had a hard week, and it's called "Show Me to the Door," says the woman of 94. It's true, I feel compelled to roam. I need to find my way back home. I catch snatches now and then, wood smoke smell, a winter wren. My hilltop home, where has it gone? My memory is overdrawn. Who are these women watching me? Wherever can my husband be? Sometimes he splits in 2 or 3, young, distinguished, spindly. My friends whose names I can't recall no longer come around at all. That man who takes me to the park to see my friends, the leaves and bark, his eyes are Russian blue like mine. I think he may come from my line. I quiz myself, is he your son? But his hair is gray, you silly one. I write the names down on a pad, but still I'm not sure which one's dad. If I could just knock down this door, get back to where I was before, I'd prove this is not mere caprice, and I would finally rest in peace. Thank you.
So you're making me cry.
Thank you, Michelle. Next, we have Jenna Lynch.
Hi, can everyone hear me okay? Great, okay. Hi, I'm Jenna Lynch, and I participated in 3030 in February 2020, last year. And just to talk a little bit about my experience, it really made me kind of slow down and not only find inspiration around me, but actually act on that inspiration and not just think about the poem I would write, but sit down and write it. So I'm really grateful for the experience. So I'm going to read a poem that came out of my February 2020 poem a day. It's called Hostile Architecture. In my office, my chair faces the window, a view of the other side of the building right past my coworker's head. The window is double-doored and beautiful, with a golden oval knob that you twist to turn the latch, pull to open. And when you do, the scene below is a courtyard of stone, 3 stories down, nothing but rock and slab. This morning, I am thinking of this window because every morning, my student, let's call her Anne, thinks of this window too. She thinks often about jumping, about using our window because with our window, there are no screens here, no bars or locks or latches that stick shut with age or safety. This morning, I am thinking of our window and I am thinking of Anne. And if she did jump, what would she do with the things on our sill so carefully laid there? What to do with the potted jade plant, the animals' matching game, the milk jug filled with buried branches, the paperweight with the inverted bubble, the visual dictionary of curiosities. Would she consider them? Move them to the table for safekeeping? Would she then, if she did decide to move them, keep the order, their place in the line? This isn't what I should be thinking. Let me start over. Let me think now about the barriers we make, about the building of barriers, about all the ways we have to keep things out. The barriers in place for the homeless and for the feral, for the dirty and the rabid, for the things we cannot bear to look at for even one more second. The spikes and the bars, the railings and strips of teeth on benches, on sills, the bolts and metal studs on ledges, barbed wire fences and stakes, but not this window, not this jamb or frame, not this paned glass. I heard this called once, going guardless, but is it? Is it really? Because is it guardless if I'm here now, here in front of this window, in front of this ledge, telling her not to jump? Is it guardless ever, even when I am not here, but here still? Because please tell me what to do, please. Please tell me, how do we be the bars when there are none? Thank you.
Amazing. Thank you, Jenna. Next, we have Christina Ernie. Christina?
Hi, everyone. My name is Christina Ernie, and I participated in the 30 for 30 in January of 2017. I also kind of signed up on a whim and then immediately started panicking that I actually had to write a poem every day. And I had 3 small children at the time and was teaching full time. And I actually participated from South Korea. So my clock was kind of flipped. So I'd wake up super early in the morning and then work on my poem all day and send it. But I was I don't know, 12 hours ahead of everyone else. So I think I got a little bit extra time to revise maybe or something. But I also loved how first of all, it showed me that I could do it. I could write a poem every day. I've never been that disciplined with my writing. So that was just a real confidence booster as a poet. And then also it really shifted my perspective throughout the day. So I found myself thinking of poems and thinking of lines all through the day. So, and I also had to give myself a lot of strategies to be able to make a poem every day. So I was experimenting a lot with forms. So I'm going to read, the poem I'm going to read is actually a formal poem. I wrote a lot of syllabics and acrostic poems, and this one is actually a sonnet. And I was interacting a lot as well with the text from the Old Testament in the Bible, from 1 Kings 19, the Elijah fed by ravens sequence in 1 Kings. So this poem actually draws a lot of its imagery from that, and is written in the voice of an angel that is kind of annoyed at Elijah's complaining in the desert and him wanting to give up. So this is called On to Horeb. Lo, the trees within the trees are moaning. The rocks within the rocks have fouled. Broom tree umbrellas above you, human. Gloaming desert, gloaming life. Do you think this frees you, relinquishing after you've waited? After all you've seen? You ran, who always run, had sustenance anyone would crave. You forgot you looked 7 times sideways through your knees. You saw the cloud as a man's hand rising from the sea, remember? You saw the sky blacken and its drench, the land's wan sinews. I've had enough, poor body pooled in shade. I'm tired too. I am here to tell you, get up, eat this bread, push through. Thank you.
That was beautiful. Thank you, Christina. Next, we have Anupama Amaran.
Thanks, Kylie. And thanks to the poets who've come before, really, really beautiful. So I was in the 3030 project in April of 2020, so exactly a year ago, which was a very difficult time. So I was just so grateful to be in a group of just amazing poets writing, and just the discipline of writing every day during the lockdown here in New York. So I had originally applied because I had this landscape project in mind. I was kind of going towards an eco-poetics project, but the world just had this other idea. And among other things, I started reading astronomy news. So you'll notice that in this poem. This is titled Jaywalking. We cannot even go on pilgrimage to pray our gods for mercy. The roadways are easy to cross, the imagination not so much. Down the road, the hospital. Up the road, the empty high school just past its athletic fields. Coming around the bend, landscapers' trucks, delivery vans, tractor trailers. There's been an increase in the population of roadrunners trying unfamiliar gravel in the wrong shoes. This seems like the right planet when I wake up in the night, but by morning, I'm not sure. After an espresso, I take a walk to an exoplanet where it rains iron at night. I turn my face to the sky, to the metal clouds, and ask pardon for this imperfect life of water and air, so needing exoneration. If my face is sheathed in armor, I send that gift down the road. If my eyes fill with metal and vision like sunrise over molten ore, I whisper its secret up the road. The heat of the star leans in. We could be mercy at 2,400 degrees Celsius. Thank you. Thank you, Tupelo Press.
That was great. Thank you, Anu. Louise Akers. Hi, Louise.
Hi, I'm Louise. I did the 3030 project in September of 2020. And I did it mostly because Kylie did it. And I saw how I was both impressed and very envious of her practice writing daily. So I decided to do it myself, and it was my first semester of graduate school, doing graduate school remotely, and studying and researching other people's literature. It was wonderful to like be forced to sit down every day and tend to my own practice, which can so easily get neglected. So I'm going to read a poem from a chapbook that's coming out this summer, that I wrote, I think, right at the very beginning of September of last year. It's called A Perfect Set. What I'm trying to say is look at August as an opposite infinity. There will be an endless drain of time to hover over zero, to warm or reckon in either direction, e.g. which pool stinks worse, which afterward resumes. I'm impatient to observe the total above board, to study birds through boards flocked over the water I've spent my life confronting. I've been mixing up waiting and hoping for years. My patience had already collapsed under the wet heat of the year, slunk back under the wood unsignifying forum. I won't wait much longer this time, the risk of static ecumenism. Still, there will be heat in the forum. There will be water dripping down from every aspen board in the ceiling. I'll level out and resurrect one. Now I hear the spitting fumarole below and the welcome thrust in our number, in the thought of those birds arriving south with us later on. Thank you.
Thank you. So good to hear, everyone. DJ Hill is up next.
It was so good to see Louise again. It's been a while. I'm DJ Hill, and I was also in September of 2020, which turned out to be a challenging month, both writing a poem a day and also just personally. But I have to thank Tupelo Press and Kirsten and Hannah and Jeffrey. I'm so excited because out of that daily practice, I had never done that before, but out of that daily practice, my chapbook will be published by Finishing Line Press this coming spring. And I just have all of you to thank, so I'm very excited about that. Today I'm going to read, I thought I would read in honor of all of the poets that were part of the September 2020 group. I wanted to read the Renga that we wrote together. So short paragraph and then I'll read the poem. You there with beating heart and sacred breath, whose touch is missed but presence felt, take my hand and extend yours to another, a human chain with the power to mend, to move, to change. Limitless is our Renga, a utopian themed Renga by the 3030 September poets. What I'm really trying to say is this: fuck transcendence. I will gladly risk our imminence, our riotous recalibration. It will change you from within, cell by cell, until you're free. Soul beyond pleasure, earthbound, kneeling at the edge, dirt as offering. Our hands, hearts, opened and outstretched, gathered truth freely tossed to the limitless sky. More stars than we can see. Orion's tunic, club, and shield, thrown off, put down for good. Anchored in fallible flesh, we find buried communion. Edges are relative. the places we touch to find the middle balance, heart, blood. We will watch Orion cross the sky at night. We will listen to the wind muss the treetops. Flesh of the moon, eat sap of the trees. Drink deeply. Here, this is for you. Thank you.
PJ, thank you so much for reading the Ranga. That's such a special treat. That's a great idea. Next, we're going to hear from Trisha Knoll. Who might not be here. I think we'll skip ahead to Danelle McGee and maybe see if Trisha's here later.
Thank you. It's good to be here. So I was in the February 2021 3030 cohort group, and it was an amazing experience. And I want to thank the press. I've been following the press, Jeffrey Levine, for many years, and it's good to be here. So I'm going to read a poem that I wrote, I believe, like day 8, maybe day 9. And it's called I Won't Elude Him. And it begins with an epigraph by the writer Norman MacLean. And so it is those we live with and should know who elude us. MacLean may have known the loneliness of tiptoeing around those we love, the circling steps of not wanting to know what is felt. For a loved one to elude me, I must turn away in some fashion from a body that craves understanding. I back away from a body that needs compassion. No need to be me, to love me, to know me, but I'm trying, people. I'm trying. Drops of love from me to you, only to go quiet in fear of abandoning you. And so I shield. I'm elusive because your trauma may break me. And did you know that my fiance talks to plants? She brings them back from the brink of wilt. I look at her, her brown hands on green orchid leaves as she smiles before speaking lovely words that bring you back to me. Her words not meant to elude. Her words remind me that I have a brother that I must go see about. Thanks, everyone. Much peace.
Thank you so much. Next, we're going to hear from Jennifer Schomburg-Kank. Jennifer, go ahead.
Thank you. So I did 3030 in July of 2017. And it was a really wonderful experience of getting to know poets from a lot of different areas, both geographically and aesthetically, and just sort of reaching out and seeing all these different folks' works, and through the alumni readings, getting to find lots of great experiences and great poems that way. What I realized when I was doing 3030 was that with my poems, it started out at the beginning of the month, everything was very tight and planned. And then by the end of the month, everything started to sort of like expand out in these crazy places and just rage all over the place. And I have like these 3-page poems of rage. And so it was really interesting to see my work sort of lose control maybe a little bit, which maybe needed to happen a little bit with my work at the time. And so it was a really great way to push myself and figure out what was really deep in there. And the poem I'm going to read now is one that comes from that end of the month, but didn't really find its way until I was in a metrical poetry class that Annie Finch was teaching. And this poem, it started as like a 2-page rage that even had like songs in it. Like there was a part where you're supposed to sing in it, like it kind of went all over the place. And now it was like a metrical mimicking of Wordsworth's "The World is Too Much with Us." So very different life for this poem, but it's called The Girls We Were Before This. The girls we were before this, loud and brash, hootin' and hollerin', we felt filled with power, playing the snake on hillsides green and lush, with our hands interlocked and whipping back and forth to music known but never heard aloud. On asphalt playgrounds hot with hormones flush, we beat the boys at all their sports and games. In this, in everything, we were so in tune. And now we're not. Dear ones, please stop yourselves from walking paths we've paved for you with blood. The way we learned to silence screams, dissent, and want. The way we knifed ourselves each day with no idea the harm it did to us. And how the creeps just kept on creeping on. Thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you. William Erickson will be next.
Hi, I'm William. I did the 3030 project in August of 2020. And I think, like everybody, it was a challenge. And I think for me, the biggest challenge was kind of exposing myself to to a certain kind of rawness that you're forced into with, with writing a poem and publishing it in a single day. Not a lot of revision went into anything, and you kind of had to rely on hitting like those little velvety spaces to do anything that you were really proud of. So, that was fun and it was a challenge. And I don't know if anyone else had the same problem, but I literally picked the poem that I want to read about 5 minutes ago between about 5 different ones that I was thinking about. And I did end up going with the poem that I wrote in August of last year. So it doesn't have a title. And it is actually in a chapbook that I'm trying to get published now. I have a chapbook coming out with finishing line at the end of this year, beginning of next year. I'll post links to that in the chat as soon as I'm done. But yeah, so this one has no title. So feel free to submit your suggestions in the chat. When they finally make the new continent, I will be the first to want to go there, but will not want to go there first. You will grab my wrist and feel what my brain does without my knowing it, and you will mistake it for love. We all do. Our fingers are 10 of the scariest things on earth. When we discover they're missing, we'll pretend surprised, looking around like we didn't hide them to stop worrying, secretly relieved we can no longer touch. The secret is the new continent. Our palms are in on it. We all are. Thank you.
Thanks, Bill. Next, we'll hear from Gordon Adams.
Got to unmute myself. Remember, how many Zoom meetings have I done and failed to unmute myself? I did the challenge, the project twice, actually. I'm a recidivist in March of 20 and then in February of this year, 21. And it had just enormous helpful impact on me. And I'm so grateful to Kirsten, to Hannah, and to Jeffrey for this wonderful project that has done so much to boost my own productivity and my own confidence, frankly. About 4 days before I did it for the first time, I remember waking up about 2 o'clock in the afternoon with a poem going through my head. And I rolled over in bed, turned on my telephone, because that's the way I write sometimes in my notes function, wrote down what was coming into my head, and then turned over and went back to sleep. And the next one came knocking at the door. So I woke up again, turned over, booted my phone, wrote down the second one. That happened 10 times that night. I'm not sure how much sleep I got, but it was like opening a gate to something. And a lot of those showed up the first time I did it. I was turned on to it by my younger adult child, Tim Kuchen, who wrote at least once in the 3030 project before I had. So he turned me onto it. And it's been a wonderful, wonderful experience for me to do it. I'm still looking for that first publication, but I've got some chapbook proposals out, and I'm working on some projects that I hope are going to lead some publication. The one that I've chosen to read for you today is called Freed, as a D at the end of free, Freed Verse. And I'm just going to give you a quick visual so that you get a sense of it, because you can see it has some odd line features. And I hope from the reading, the reason for those line features will become apparent to you. This is Freed Verse. Inside, they stay close while I wait for one, just one courageous word to accept my invitation. Glancing back at my soul's retention, one tentatively steps out into verbal recess. Frightened children, there might be trouble. 2 or 3 more peek around the corner of my impulses and are so tempted, little ones that want to come along for the ride. The dam of hesitation shudders and falls. A babbling brook of words rush out to play. Jostling and shoving like bumper cars, they race around in disorderly stanzas. I call them to form a line and behave, to hold each other by the punctuation. They don't listen, off they go to the playground, breaking away and scattering in anarchic chaos. Scum scoot down the middle slide of memory, one at a time, forming a thought at the bottom. Others bounce up and down, shifting the weight of generalization and specificity, a verbal teeter-totter. They pitch metaphors like horseshoes, twist along the suspended rungs of rhyme, crawl through the tunnels of imagery, and slide down the firefighter's pole into a sentence. These anarchic little things don't listen. You have no power here, they shout. You are just along for the poetic ride. We are freed at last, freed at last. Thank you.
Thank you, Gordon. All right, Andrew Morrison will be next.
All right, well, good evening, everybody, and greetings from a rainy South Texas. I have not done the 30-30. I did the Truchas last year, and I was very disappointed that I couldn't go to New Mexico and hang out in the mountains with fellow poets. But instead, it was all virtual, but it was still very useful. And one of the most valuable things for me was that I did the manuscript review as well. And I sent my poems off to Jeffrey, who pronounced that I had a voice, which was extremely encouraging. Didn't say I had an accent, he just said I had a voice. So that was very good. And I will say that the subgroup that I was part of there continues to meet on a monthly basis. And so if they're listening, greetings to Susan, Amy, Joyce, and Ina, who were my cohorts in this subgroup on the Truchas. I would like to read a poem for you called Obad. For anyone who's not familiar with the concept, it means it's a greeting to the dawn. And typically it was lovers greeting the dawn, telling it to go away again because they want a few more hours. And this was published in September in Acumen, which is a UK poetry magazine, literary journal. Obad. Sunday morning and a siren wails like a midnight clarinet caught in a loop, fading as the unseen ambulance passes into someone else's nightmare. And the sound of the wind comes back together like water over a dropped stone. In the street, leaves dance a round or two and then retire exhausted and confused like old folk in a waiting room. While overhead, a plane pursues its mission, ferrying passengers across the sticks to their final destinations. The winter sun, wan and watered down, is working hard to wake a world reluctant to relax its grip on sleep. Someone ought to let it know. It's Sunday morning. Let it go. Thank you.
Thank you, Andrew. I will say that is quite a voice. Thank you for sharing it with us. Next, we have Trisha Knoll, who is here now. Trisha, thank you.
Thank you. I too went to Truchas and studied with Jeffrey. And what I remember very clearly is him saying that he was not fond of poems that talked about herons, dogs, or darkness. I did the 30-30 in January of 2019. And I should say, I have a voice disability. There's nothing wrong with your audio. And in Vermont, a lot of poets, that's where I live, a lot of poets have resolutions to write a poem a day starting on New Year's. And what we end up with is a lot of poems about snow. I decided not to read a poem about snow tonight because it might jinx the spring that we're trying to resurrect here in Vermont. But there is a forecast for snow in Adirondacks and possibly Burlington. I'm going to read a poem from my chapbook that is just out this month from Kelsey Books, and it's called Checkered Mates. And I'm gonna read a prose poem that is a true story. Letter to my first husband, written during surgery, in which he was transformed into a woman. An old man in Grace Paley's story advises that to age well, take your heart in both hands every morning when you wake up. Talk to it. Supply words to further the work it needs to do. Your surgeon makes intricate folds and tucks, the rightness you seek. May he have the skill of your mother, the seamstress. When finished, take your heart in both hands. And your breasts, talk to them, touch your new vagina, whisper healing. You have always been smart. When your eyes focused on a distance, I knew you were off somewhere being smart. Sometimes you would share, but mostly you didn't. How could you explain what it's like to stare at a nameless star? It stands to reason that you would jump to the best, to jump to the demographic that lives the longest, old ladies. The lonely majority who accepts invisibility, invisible to the men who smell of cigarette smoke and sell chocolates in gas stations, or the university students who break the ice shells of frozen puddles with their heavy-heeled boot. They don't know what wild once beat in our heart. So I say, you are wise to join us. We need all the smart ones we can assemble. I didn't realize that the young protesters in Hong Kong carried umbrellas to avoid being identified in security cameras. I thought monsoon season had hit Hong Kong big time. Every person lugs an identity umbrella. You've put an ill-equipped one aside. Mine matches the onesie that our grandson wears. Choose a new fabric. Swirl in rainbow choices. We may not need umbrellas this minute, but they come in handy in face of deluges and idiots. Waiting these dark hours for news of your surgery's progress feels like standing by for a baby to be born. Bless the newborn grandmother.
Thank you, Tricia. That was incredible. Thank you so much. Next, we'll hear from Barb Jennies.
Yes, hi, it's Barb Jennis. Sorry. I have actually done 30-30 twice. Once was in March of 2019, and a lot of those poems are in a chapbook, which is going to be released by also by Finishing Line Press in early 22. It's going to be a pre-sale in October. And then I also did it again in December of 2020, which was another wonderful experience. It really does get your juices going and has really helped prolong my ability to write a poem, maybe not every day, but pretty frequently. This is a poem that I wrote in December of 2020, and it's appearing in Crosswinds Journal in May, and it's also the last poem in a collection I'm assembling now called We All Drank the Waters of Mammoth Spring, and that's actually the name of the poem. We all drank the waters of Mammoth Spring. It surged up from a black, unplumbable depth, a cascade of water like an endless exhale, unwilling in the way of all water to yield. It ambled through our backyards, percolated into our wells through crazed bedrock, fed us the minerals that build bones and teeth, flooded our cells with stardust, syllables of creation, bits of infinity. We drank beavers and bears, mastodons and Mohicans, comets and cattails, everything that had ever lived and died, decayed and seeped into the aquifer below our feet. We were awash in what was. We played around the spring's spongy rim, peered into its black mirror to see the ghosts of those we had subsumed, dredged flint arrowheads out of the sedge-filled swamp, broken pottery from flooded foundations, mossy bones of cows swallowed by muck. Our playground was a graveyard filled with birth, just as our lives were rough garments woven of stink and sweetness, loss and love. We all drank the waters of Mammoth Spring, and whatever issued from its fathoms still swims in our cells, our blood. So thank you.
Thank you, Barb. Next, we'll have Michael Kleza.
Kleza. Am I unmuted? I'm okay. I'm good. I'm good to go. Okay. I was on the poetry for tapestry for poetry, or poetry for tapestry. That was in February or March of this year. I found it very enlightening. It was interesting that Jeffrey was talking about putting the words had to be unique in the poem, and as opposed to everyday language. And I've been reading a bit of Terry Eggleton, and that's part of a theory by the Russian formalists of the early 20th century that they came out with. So it was an interesting time. Anyways, I'm going to read a poem called Home Reno. This is from my book, which is available for a Canadian price, so it's going to be really cheap. So you guys will get a deal on it. It's called Home Reno. It's his handiness she admires, she says. This thought bandied about the poetry goers, light talk and laughter. Later, though, she whispers of resignation. His fugitive lovemaking, rough and quick, the twisted nipple between sandpaper fingers, the clumsy penetration and the clockwork mechanics scraping on the unshaved morning. She admits her lover lost, replaced with the snick and shh of the tape measure. The step back assessment, the accurate eyeballing, The confident probing of breadth and height applied to inanimate 2x4s, ABS pipe, concrete block, and wallboard. The gentle love he once displayed, she now sees in lifting and screwing the toilet in place without cracking a bolt hole, leveling the shelf above the laundry tub, or expertly inserting the P-trap into the waiting drain. That's it.
Thank you, Michael.
Yeah, you're welcome.
All right, next we'll hear from Rachel Kuby.
Hi, everyone. I'm Rachel. I am a public reference librarian in Charlotte. I've done the Tupelo 3030 project a number of times, and I really enjoy it. I've done it with friends, and I've done it by myself. I've done it giving myself assignments, like once was after taking part in the Moral Monday protests in North Carolina, and trying to write really overtly political poems where all of the poems were directed at either the state legislature or as letters to the governor of North Carolina. There are other times that I've tried to write more personal poems. And I am going to go ahead and read one, and I have not published a book or a chapbook. I have, a number of them have been published by small journals. This one is called Sleep is a Prayer for Haunting, and it was published in Arts and Letters, which is a great little journal. And Tupelo is wonderful. I think the first poets that I read by Tupelo were Ilya Kaminsky and Matthew Zapruder. And that's when I started looking for books by Tupelo, and just so many of the poets are just really wonderful and surprising. And 3030 Project is another really wonderful thing in my life. So anyway, so thank you. Thank you to Kirsten. You've really been wonderful over the years, and to Jeffrey and to everyone who's worked with Tupelo. Sleep is a prayer for haunting. When will they speak to me in my dreams? In sleep's chill hall, pale as the hospital, my father in his blank gown shrugs and turns from my tripping questions. My mother never comes, but I know how to love now. I know how. At night, I fill the high, empty chairs in the audience of a nonsense opera. It was never the words that mattered. Drinking in great breaths of sleep, like applause and laughter, shaking the rafters. My vision grows so lonely, holding this gaze on the worn, bare stage, but it is not blindness, really. I would turn the lights out, I would unfasten wisdom and step barefoot from all my thinking if she would push apart that ragged curtain and say one thing straight to me. Thank you.
There we go. Couldn't unmute for a second. Thank you, Rachel. That was wonderful. Next, we'll have Deborah Kelly read.
Okay. Hello, everyone. I'm pulling up my poem here. There we go. I have had the lasting joy of having been to 2 Tupelo conferences, both in person, one in Truchas and Truchas, and one in Massachusetts in the Berkshires. And this is my second 3030 project. Every time I dip my toe into something else having to do with Tupelo, I come out going, give me more. It's so first rate. I want to say it's been 2 years since my first 3030 project, and I did another one in February. And so I'm going to read you a poem that I wrote at the peak of our quarantine time there in February, and it's titled Remotely. Remotely on a peak at 1 year of quarantine. From here, what I see is the moon is a scrim. Its phases are our planet's override, and Earth casts its own nighttime. I am affixed to my seat to watch such penumbras and figures running fast clips in a zoetrope. Solitary in spare strokes, I've been writing on white with black mascara. But even here, hunger's our bruises and thirst a gash unstanched, elaborate in detail and color. Wind-stripped trees show their bones, stained and imprinted with all the strain of their fibers, their slow twist. They are the instances. They are the instances between shadow and body. They make all art shiver.
Beautiful, Deborah, that last line, thank you. Next, we'll hear from Catherine Korth de Hayes.
Hi. Hello, everyone. Nice to see you. I went out to Truchas quite a few years ago, and it was a great experience. Jeffrey, of course, was there, and Veronica Golos, who's often contributing, and also Ilya Kaminsky, who's a tremendous writer, but also such a great scholar and a teacher. So I benefited tremendously from it. I'm going to read a poem. This is from a series that a group of writers that I'm have been doing called Still Against War. It's kind of an anthology, and there's been 10 books, so this is from the third, and it was written for one of my sisters who passed some years ago. And I'll also just say, by a complete coincidence, another sister of mine is here this evening. She's on the roster directly behind me. How coincidental can that be? So this poem is called "You Were There." It's for Madeline Korth Blind. You were there, a being, ineffable, pulsing. You were there, eyes glowing. Your hair was silky to the touch. There was a something there, a someone, a she, suddenly, who seemed to have pushed through the air and into that moment, late afternoon, golden and green. You laughed as you ran across the grass. You enjoyed running, and the new cut grass was cool on small feet. Conversation bubbled all around, indistinct, floated down from the porch, across the patio. There was a sound of lawnmowers, a scent of barbecues, and the new cut grass. You were happy. You loved to eat. Thank you so much.
Wonderful, Kate, thank you.
Thank you.
And Victoria, you're next.
Thanks, Kate. I wish I had known you were going to read that about Madeline. I would have read one of mine about her. I did the 3030 project in March 2020. And one thing I learned or I experienced was that I really love to write when I know someone is going to read the poem, especially right away. And we were getting these emails saying there were 1,000 people checking the blog, and it was incredible. And I realized I love to be able to speak to people. And when we write, it's often very isolated, and there's just not much there as far as communication. So this was just really, I loved it. A lot of poems flowed, and it was a lot of fun. This poem is not from that project, but it's basically, it starts out in the setting, or the trigger was closing my private practice as a psychiatrist, which we closed in 2019. And I shared space with a lot of psychiatrists over the years. One in particular, whose practice I took, he gave me his practice. So we had in the basement just tons of records. And then we had to move out. So that started this poem. Closing the therapy practice. Today, kneeling in the office basement, I shredded hundreds of handwritten notes, a retired colleague's dedication to his craft, fell into a rhythm, passing each page right to left and into the bin. The indecipherable writing garlanded acts of listening in the therapy room. Proof of faith in the living. Faith, an alphabet made of 26 hands. Tonight, my hands keep moving when at rest. I hold them up with half-closed eyes and, exhaling slowly, draw them inchingly toward the other until they become strangers and the space between breaks into color, my own warmth prismed, breath's current visible between poles. And I think, oh, this is the transfiguration, when his robes whitened into near blindness and disciples kneeled to make an altar, but as suddenly in the midday dust turned profitless, visionless, and all our companions, here they are, empty-handed. Thank you.
That's great, Victoria. Thank you. Lee Parpart, you're reading next.
Yep, thank you, Kylie. Thank you, Kirsten. Thank you, Jeffrey. Thank you, everyone. I was scared and excited to be following Victoria, whose poem I just absolutely loved, and she won the Montreal Prize, and wow. Yeah, so I had a wonderful experience doing the 30-30 in August, and I have pretty severe ADHD, and so and which I'm only realizing now is kind of also a superpower in addition to stopping me from writing all the poems that are in my head. So I'm writing a series of poems about the superpower aspect of it, and about well, not writing about this, but it's certainly the 30-30, the experience was a great help in terms of getting past the thinking into the doing, and removing some of the thought that always interferes. So I was with Jeffrey and then or with Kirsten, and then immediately after doing the 30-30 was able to do the Truchas. And I don't know whether it's Trucas or Truchas, but I was in that with Jeffrey and with Veronica Golos and Christina Marie Darling and Ilya Kaminsky. An incredible experience. And I just have to quickly say that I have quoted Jeffrey so many times to poet friends. The most remarkable thing I heard that weekend, hopefully not stealing any thunder, was when he talked about his process of radical revision and this feeling, this sense that as poets, we ought to be able to lay hands on the poem and feel where it's hot, and then try for a time to restrict ourselves to working with those hot spots, and then work and write between them. So that's my dog. So in the spirit of the daily terror of the 30-30, I wrote a poem today, and it has to go through Jeffrey's process still, but it's getting there. It's called Species Death is an Old Story. On our way to get ice cream, I'm bubbling over with facts about Brazil. I talk to you about trade winds and shrubby savannas, broadleaf tropical ferns, crouching under Jussara palms, an endangered species in the Atlantic forest. You retreat into silence, thinking about maple walnut, the electrical bill, that song you've been working on for 2 weeks. Maybe the bridge isn't working. Maybe you've just pulled a lyric from a passing streetcar and you're trying to hold on to it. A long marriage is a landmass, puppeteered from above and below by magma and storm clouds, sunshine, and seafloor spread. As always, I'm dreaming, thinking about what has to die and what gets to live for two hearts to dwell together this long. On any given day in Paraguay and along the coast of Brazil to Argentina, poachers are moving through the forest, harvesting the hearts of the Jussara. To get at their prize, they have to cut off the tops of the trees and scoop into the trunk like scooping ice cream. The crowns end up on the ground, wide symmetrical fronds and unknown edible fruit moldering in the sun. Species death is a long story, full of plot holes. We're in the kitchen again, 5 years have gone by, and you asked me to do that funny dance we saw on TV in the 90s, a spasmodic eruption like thumbing a ride while swatting a black fly that's just bitten your ankle. When the mountains rose out of the oceans, they must have had their reasons. Millions of years had gone by in a marriage of rock and sea. How could the peaks have known they were made for air instead of water? I'm watching you from behind, noticing how sweetly your Levi's droop at the rear. I'm thinking of the vacation we almost took a month before the world closed, how we almost stood on the lookout at P-Town staring at the sea, how we could have done the dance we call the Nuba Vagant, clouds over cattails on a cold Cape Cod morning. A long marriage is a landmass moved by forces from above and below. The good news is that in the Atlantic forest, they keep finding new species, thousands of flowering plants no one has ever heard of or seen before, some with blossoms like trumpets and saxophones. The black-faced lion tamarin, a small New World primate with thick red fur like the mane of a lion, is alive and well, if rare. Farmers are trying to bring back the Jussara palm by selling the fruit instead of lopping off the crowns. Sloths, like clovers with 4 toes instead of 3, are swinging through the forest right now.
Wonderful, Lee. Thank you.
Thanks so much.
Jamie O'Halloran.
Hi, yeah, I'm Jamie O'Halloran. I am in Ireland, and it is getting on to 1:30 in the morning, and it's I thought I might start drifting up, but no, everything is so stimulating. It's really wonderful to be here, and thank you again so much, Kirsten and Hannah and Jeffrey, for what you do at Tupelo and making these opportunities possible. Last year, I had 3 seasons of Tupelo, Truchas and the Perfect 15, and then the 30-30, which I did in January. I thought it would be a good way to begin the year. Something I'd wanted to do for a while. And what I didn't have a lot of ideas, any projects in mind when I began. I just knew I wanted to write about place and time, just write about the present. And so that took being in rural Ireland, and it's the first year we've been here. So it was new seasons, and it was kind of good to have the 30-30 to do when I had very, very short days, not a lot of daylight. So there was no excuse of having to go out to the garden. And I did have the opportunity. What I did write is a crown of sonnets, and then some topical poems. I mean, one unfortunately was an elegy for a friend who passed away, and another was a real surprise gift where an acquaintance who saw on social media that I was doing this asked me to write a poem for friends of hers for their marriage. So, and this was a timely poem that I would not have written it if I didn't have the 30-30. And you'll know what it's about. I won't tell you the day I wrote it because you'll get it. You'll get it right away. Capitol Hill Epiphany, and this is really with a tip of the hat to William Carlos Williams. The news from poems is not new, but despised for its lack of newness, its blunt truthiness that calls us to the greater good. My mother used to complain at the dinner table that good was great, but neglected or swapped for shiny things, telling untruths that made some feel they weren't bad, but broken by others. The corpse flower opens its fetid bloom to lure carrion eaters. It has a rotten stink, not the moral odor of asphodel, welcoming bees to feast upon it. The corpse spathe attracts disciples who open their mouths to the putrid stench of rotting fish for a night of feeding. they could die from what is found there. Thank you.
Thank you, Jamie. That's beautiful. Don McGuire is next. Dawn, are you here?
I think Dawn doesn't have video, so I think we'll move past.
Okay, we'll go on to Aileen Souls.
Hi, I'm Aline Souls, and I'm one of the recidivists, as someone earlier described us, having done 30/30 more than once. I have in the past been to Truchas, but not recently. And I did the manuscript conference and came home with wonderful feedback from Jeffrey and decided I needed to expand it and change it. And that's what I'm in the process of doing now. The poem I'm going to read does come from my January 2021 30/30 project, but it has been extensively revised since then. Zeno's Paradox. Christine could twist an apple in half with her bare hands, half for her, half for me. We shared them with her horse, Timmy, half of her half of mine. In time, Timmy learned how to nuzzle his way into all our apples with a satisfied crunch. We rode, Christine in front, me riding pinion, Timmy plodding a circular rut in the field. Her parents sold half the field in the recession of the 1950s. Timmy was old by then and didn't need as much room. Half the field for him, half for a new housing estate that blocked his son. When Timmy died, no one told us where he went, explained phrases like knacker's yard or glue factory. The rut remained in his half of the field, a relic of time past. After decades, I visited Timmy's field, now filled with houses on both halves. I think about the race between Achilles and the tortoise. Achilles ran faster. The tortoise had a 100-yard start. Achilles halved the distance between them again and again. How can Achilles overtake the tortoise? Zeno asks. The ancient Greeks didn't understand limits, couldn't answer. Today, we believe in the limit of an infinite series, can prove the exact point where Achilles overtakes the tortoise. Yet I wonder if the rut of Timmy's hooves still lies beneath the houses, might be found 1,000 years from now in some archaeological dig that once again would give us the gift of not understanding limits. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Next, we'll have Joanna Lee read.
Hello. I was one of the 28 for 28 participants this year in February. And what it really did for me was allowed me to focus on my writing and to be more observant and more in the moment during the course of the day so that I had something inspiring to write from when I sat down to write at night, which is how it always ended up late at night. Hannah can tell you I almost always write under the deadline for midnight. But what I want to read tonight is a poem that was not from the 2020, but a project that I'm still working on, a collection that is centered around a modern or feminist version of the story of Helen of Troy. And there's a little background to the story if you're not familiar. Leda was Helen's mother, and she was raped by the god Zeus in the form of a swan. And I guess that's sort of important to the poem. After 2,000 plus years, Helen decides to be the bitch everyone says she is. It's in the middle of a dark street. Her hands are hot on the hood of your cruiser. You can't see what glints from the ocean in her eyes. She is there and gone. Already 2 blocks down, the next town over, the sniper shooting disdain from the top of the mayor's high-rise. She's seen it all before. Men breaking like water on the walls, slaughter of children in the streets, the prophecies mumbled like prayers even as a way of life goes up in flames. Your sirens have nothing on her. She's not taking your calls. She's not looking to run away with you. She can pay her own damn bar tab. No one knows better that rape depends on who is telling the story. She is not her mother's story. Her heels, lightning rods that could crack your spine. Her hips, a jar of thirst. Her heart, a jeweled cage no one can afford. The bluebird inside, content with its own bluebird song. Not a swan song. You're not telling her story. There is thunder in the way she looks away from you. She is, after all, her father's daughter. She's not into Facebook. When you can't sleep, sheep count through her Insta. Find her front and center of your revolution, looking on the verge of angelic. Her mascara never runs. Where the prayers are sent depends on who is telling the story. Thank you.
Thank you, Joanna. Next, we'll have Nancy Goddard.
Thank you. Thank you. My connection with Tupelo began in July of last year. I did a manuscript conference, and it's interesting to see so many people from that conference here. It was enlightening. It opened door after door for me, and I really appreciate the work that went into looking at our manuscripts, and it sent me to a new and interesting place. The poem about Helen, I'm working on a series, a group of what I call twice told tales, and it does include an interview with Helen. But the one I'm reading today is one of the first things I tried my hand at after the manuscript conference. And I also, the form of the page became very important. I don't know if you can see, but perhaps some. In any case, her husband, the master metalsmith, who wrought so finely the golden net he caught them in flagrante, has left the scene. Amid the laughter of the assembled gods, Mars, red-faced and unmanned, has scuttled off. He was, after all, becoming a bit of a bore, his demands on her time, his ever-increasing need for her attention. She, of course, remains unchastened. Making a spectacle of herself has never bothered her, nor interfered with the pleasing pastimes of love, her stock in trade. But now, bored, peevish, looking afield for amusement, she spies two women approaching one another across the Stop and Shop Market parking lot. Calling the boy, she gives him a pat on his curly head, nods towards the scene below. His aim is true. He never misses. And so it begins. Thank you.
Thank you, Nancy. And next, we'll have Nancy Davis.
Hi, excuse me. It's wonderful to be here. It's a shame we can't put an anthology together of all the amazing poems that have been read tonight. It's really stunning. It's an inspiration. I too have a chapbook with Finishing Line Press. Boy, they get around. But they are a wonderful press to work with. But tonight I'm going to read a poem. It's actually the first poem I wrote for the 30/30 last June of 2020. And I decided to read this because it brings me joy. And that's what the 30/30 brought, as well as the manuscript conference that the other Nancy present spoke of just a few minutes ago. It truly was an oasis in a time when, of course, we were all suffering the grim statistics and perhaps worse of the pandemic. Pardon me. So when a friend of mine told me this story about an old mutual friend of ours, I had to write a poem about it, and it became this. Maggie sings to her koi each morning, Seattle in spring. Through the rose arbor, past the clematis, down into the grove of lodgepole pines, and under the weeping willow, Maggie walks the path to her pond each morning, carrying a basket of food for her koi. She steps to the bridge, leans into her reflection, and fanning her arm like an angel's wing, releases a handful. Dragonflies hover, double-backed, iridescent. Gnats crowd the surface, ripples breaking liquid glass, revealing blurred blues and reds, yellows, oranges. Flashing, sun-streaked. Maggie sings, her sage kimono shifting notes of the Auvergne. Her favorite, a rustback with ebony, torpedoes the cusp of their worlds in frenzied whirling. Her sonorous high notes, greater sustenance than food. Hands skimming, fish shimmering. Urban echoes ricochet across the valley, calls of protest, megaphoned orders, clashing forces of glass and metal. Whirring mechanical insects. Muted for now, distant, trapped in the conflagration below. Pressure rising, pandemic suspended, like Maggie's high notes ready to explode. Seamless medley of chansons, her koi, her children, circling, coiling, this private ritual, her Eden. Thank you.
Wonderful, thank you. Brian Evans-Jones is up next.
Hi, everyone. So I went to the manuscript conference in July 2020 also, which is currently my only connection with Tupelo, although you're all inspiring me to make sure I get reconnected. And like, as Jeffrey said, it was wonderful that Zoom existed, and because that gave me a chance to go, I wouldn't have been able to do the in-person, and I counted myself really lucky to be able to do it on Zoom. And I thought that was a wonderful experience. I went into it because I didn't know what on earth I was doing in trying to put together a poetry manuscript, chapbook or full length. And I came out with a bulging tool bag, which just made me feel really blessed. And I've already used it many times in my teaching, actually, with students, so it's helped me that way too. So I'm going to read a poem which I wrote shortly afterwards and would not have existed at all without the conference, and particularly without Christina Marie Darling banging on at me about thinking about points of view and titles. So this is called "To the Woman Who Nearly Ran Me Down on a Crosswalk the Day My Dad Began Radiotherapy. I'm so awake to the green spikes in the dead brown grass after yesterday's storm. Flower new shine of yellow gloves on the old guy directing traffic. On Main, a hummingbird sits on air like a thing I might trust. So bright because of what I can't see. My dad under a machine that can't save his life. Invisible rays do invisible work to give him more days, though it does not see him. It just goes on, insensate box, grey like the cloudy English days. And while I walk, rolling, silver roar, flash of window, giant car, unseen, somehow straight for me, hunting my future. And you, inside, on your phone, not seeing me jerking back, dwindling in your rear view. I could yell, flick you the bird, but the phone in your hand, the news it spills, scan, diagnosis, pills. How that last time you drove up there, you saw vanished flesh, thin skin, new gaps in his talk. And his gaze, aiming at you, but past, to a thing no one can see. Thank you.
Thank you, and Brian. Wonderful. Next, we'll have Dina. I appreciate the pronunciation note in your name. Dina, go ahead.
Thank you very much. I'm Dina. I did the 30-30, actually the 28 and 28 in February of 2015. I was living in Dubai at the time. And like Christina, Ernie, I benefited from the time shift. So, but it did kind of add to the strangeness of the whole thing. Most of the poems I wrote at that time, I've shaped into a manuscript. And in January of this year, I took Tupelo's manuscript conference. And I continue to shape and reshape. And a few of us from that conference continue to meet in an accountability group and support one another. So thank you to Kirsten, to Jeffrey, to Hannock, to Kylie for creating this community and bringing people together. I'm going to read something from that time period that landed in Bennington Review shortly after I wrote it. Dear Motion Line. Dear Motion Line, dear future panel, motion line into future panel, more lines into more panels, slow down, it's my turn to catch you. Dear stranger, dear familiar comfort, how we say till soon to mean the sun rises and the sun sets simultaneously, though both figures of speech. In subterranean flow that follows contours of tectonic plates, evolution of soon. Also, I'm tired, I'm busy. This is a middle, this is a decentering. Let's send this on another line of flight. A caress, I'll miss you. Dear entire alphabet, dear space between each letter, balance in the composition that makes two faces a vase, an unfolding syntax in perpetual explosion. Dear surgeon in the pleural cavity, the semantics of lungs represent suitcases. Dear veridical breath, treacherous memory. Dear sometimes, almostness is a state with and without. Sometimes I remember myself here. Sometimes the rememberer of me is, and sometimes I am a mayfly there. A day can be a lifetime. Time can be, and sometimes not. Dear distant subject of perception, you are a named shadow on the cave wall. You are the object casting the shadow. You are what I don't know. You're a series of declarative sentences written in disappearing ink, rewritten by a hand holding the trunk of a tree in an allegorical forest that substantiates the sky. I am yours. Thank you.
Love that, Dina. Thank you. Next, we'll hear from Jenny Grassel.
Hello. I'm unmuted. Okay. First, I just want to applaud the 3030 poets. I don't know how you do it. I am a conference poet, but I'm glad to be here. I'm just amazed at the breadth and quality of what you all did. But so I was led to the conferences by my experience with Tupelo books. Some of my favorite authors are published there, and I live with my favorite authors in a sense, and I wanted to learn about poetry from the people that publish these people, and I wasn't disappointed. Christina, Jeffrey, and Cassandra, working with them was like this. They always push to a new level, a higher level, a word, a phrase, a poem, a layout, or even an entire manuscript, and I was grateful. Poetry became even more exciting to write after the conference. So my poem is Through Flown. Drop year from your reptilian, a twist of skin you loved in. Prehistory, then the mouth, shed kiss, ogre print lips on the cave. To survive a girl you have been, in pollen conquers kinder. Out of breath run, hui glee needs no harp for praise. Her gratitude agreed for buds pitched through suns and blossoms hung, pink pelts. Enough for God if birds sung. Sloughed off, slipped rivers down, new rains won't plunge hot wonder into cold, for it must speak sepals to the dark. Flown girl you may have been, might tamper, bestir to maple key spin. Sky making room, seeds turn the sense of things where they land. If lavish, then instance, no season, only wardrobe, a yet still piecing losses, revises as dress and chaff. She can now be lit underground as daffodil, hermaphrodite's bulb. The deer won't touch, sacred or doom. The beginning is to forget the end, bunched the reckless stems. Thank you.
Thank you, Jenny. Ellen Peckham, you're next.
I think Helen had to leave.
Okay,
I hope I'm a better poet than I am.
Oh, there we are.
No, a better poet than I am a computer nerd, because I screw everything up. And the Tupelo people have been very patient with me. So anyway, I did only the one Tupelo. I am fairly immobile, shall we say. Don't travel and don't do a lot of things. And it was wonderful, wonderful to have the Tupelo team and then to meet people on it. And I've had a couple of direct exchanges with other people from the sessions, and it's really opened up wonderfully to me a community that I could not otherwise get to. So my great thanks to them. I would like to read Musings. In the first book of the Raj Quartet, Paul Scott writes of music defined as its awareness of breaking silence and returning into it. Closing my burning eyes, I lay the paper back aside thinking of things that know from where and when they start and where and when they end. How in painting the masters know to pigment's depth the stroke that finishes, Daumier's sketchy surface, Ingres polish, the perfect Chinese wash, all start inevitable. The element, not sound but space, as when on canvases of equal size, mountains misted miles beyond inform a horizon, or contain a face our fingers might caress. Or how a face with steel-cut bones, sapphire lit in an awning's reflection, incised in a breath my history as AD from BC, so clear the start, the end. Thank you.
Beautiful, Ellen. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Christina Baptista, you're next.
Hi. So I'm Chris Baptista, and I was a March 2014 poet. So I feel like I'm a little bit, not even thinking of the pandemic at any point in 2014. At the time I was doing it, I was also teaching, as I still am, at an all-girls high school. And I think the students loved seeing what I was going to write every day. And so did my colleagues, and a lot of them ended up donating. And so it was just kind of really fun for them to see the non-kind of teacher side of me. What was interesting about writing 30 poems in 30 days is that I actually found that it was fueling another project I was working on. So in 2014, I was selected to sail on the last remaining whale ship in the world at Mystic Seaport that summer. And I actually have a collection of it coming out in a couple of months. So I thought I would read a poem called Writing Home. And my collection is about whaling, immigrant experience, and particularly Portuguese whalemen, because I'm a Portuguese American writer. And this poem, Writing Home, is on the predominant illiteracy of the Portuguese whalemen. The shoulders are the first to tell you your work is done, or your work is not done. When the stagger is caught in mid-rise because the wind plays tricks, even though the sun is brighter than on Madonna, the arms and muscles just above the blades of narrow bone, slim and angled, almost burned by sun if only the skin was not such a swarth. That is the moment of reliance and how a body moves like a keel with so little leeway, yet so much power, plugged with wood, stuffed with wood, rocking with wood, always. The stuff of a body is always a skeleton of nature, a true self, the listing beneath a weight almost too much to bear, almost too familiar. At night, you roll the joints, rub the shoulders. You light a candle, the remains really. You read the signals in ashen curls, parenthetical fragments filling a blank page against a painted wall. Then, stretching a hand, you reach for the paper and become a liar. Here, in half dark, sitting in the broken belly, you pretend for a moment that you can write home. Thank you.
That's awesome, Christina. Thank you for sharing. Next, we'll have Anna Blackmer.
Hi. I was in the October Truchas conference, and it was really wonderful. There are several people here, Jamie, Andrew, Lee, who are also in that conference. And I'm really inspired by what everyone has said here today about the 3030 project. So I think I will probably sign up for that soon. But the Truchas conference was just wonderful. The fact that it happened on Zoom was like a miracle, and it was just great. It didn't make it any less powerful. And this poem is actually, this is the first poem I wrote after that conference. So, blue moon turned from yellow, turned from cheese to stone. I turned to you in the car, the heater on, turned and kissed you on the mouth until it hurt. As I felt life bump and settle, the moon hanging, a kiss, that would end the twilight over hundreds of silvered airstreams parked at Pete's RV center, longing to hit the road as salmon light out west blushed and nodded, first to you, then to me, your passenger.
Anna, that's wonderful. Thank you. Our last poet tonight is going to be Donna Sprouts-Metz. Sprout-Metz.
Well done. Thank you. Can you guys do it? One more poem? All right. There's three things. Oh, I was in the October 2017 30-30. And what I need to say about that is that I still retain really good friends from that. One of my best poet people that we turn to each other for our writing all the time. I just read her Lilly Award application today from 2020, 30-30. Well, so it's a great community building. And now I'm going to read that poem, guys. For this poem, you need to know three things. The Esnoga is a 400-year-old synagogue in Amsterdam that survived the wars, and it's amazing. When I say you in this poem, it's capitalized, and I'm speaking to God or the holy, or however. And the last thing you need to know is that Jenever is a very strong white Dutch alcohol. Excellent. Okay. God in Amsterdam. The Esnoga, sea times horses slipping down your holy walls, her 400-year-old bricks and glass, Sabbath's opaque light filling the women's balcony, no service now, just this milky glow, the Torah quiet in its closed ark. Hello, God, I say, come on out. I know you are here somewhere. After all, this is your house. The least you could do is offer me a drink. Have a drink, you say. You sit down in the deafening rustle of your knot robes. Pour good Jenever into fine small glasses. And there we are, going at it shot to shot. Finally, someone who can't drink me under the table. I can't drink under the table. You pour another. We are jolly. You answer all my questions about death. Okay, about my own death, about your laws. I mean, are they really yours, or did we just make them up? And peace, why is it so hard? And kindness and the dew on the morning grasses. You keep up a steady stream of Jenever. Make sure I am too drunk to remember your answers.
Amazing. Thank you, Donna. So good to hear everyone read tonight. I think I'm turning it back over to Kirsten or to Hannah now.
Oh, can I just say that that poem is coming out in Sultry and Lyre in a couple of months.
Great. Thank you. It's wonderful.
Lovely.
Yeah. Okay.
Kylie, thank you. What a lovely job of hostessing. It's something that I've enjoyed since the very first, well, again, this is the 6th, the very first reunion reading is inviting one of our members to be our MC. I think it's a lovely way to meet everybody. And so far, everybody's been a brilliant MC. So we're in luck. So this has been a long reading. I applaud those of you who have made it through, and I never skipped a beat. What amazing poems, what amazing poets, all of you.